Are going to join late.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, that's a new Zoom voice. I haven't heard that one before. So, welcome. Thank you to everyone that has joined right now and for everyone watching the recording later. Hello. I am Nivi. I'll introduce myself better in a second, but to just like throw everyone into the deep end right away, I just wanted to start with the question off to the group, which is, what is everyone planning to get out of this session? And you can just put it in the chat or you can unmute. But what are you planning to get out of this workshop? And the answer can be, I don't know, and that's totally fine. But I want to hear what your answers are. And I'll also type my own in. I love that. I want to make the world safer for more people. I really, really, really like that. That's great. Being in community. Laneen said some tips to take action. I'm ready to do some stuff. Same. How to handle tough conversations. That is a very big one that our speakers chatted about in the beginning. Creating and facilitating an inclusive community. Well, yes, you've come to the right place. And I am so looking forward to talking through this. If you think of anything throughout today, tomorrow, or Thursday that you want to get out of this, or have any questions that aren't being answered, definitely voice them. But first, before we officially start today's session, I just want to encourage everyone to use this moment to do a little reset for your day. Maybe it's been really hectic, maybe you're just waking up, maybe you've been in back-to-back meetings, but just join me in taking one deep breath. Make it as deep as you can. That is also mostly for me because I feel chaotic all the time and I want a little bit of space when we come to these events. I also want to encourage everyone to turn off their Zoom self-view. The reason that I ask that in the beginning of every workshop that I facilitate is it helps you be a more active listener and retain information better. So it really works for the speakers that have brought their amazing content to the table, and it works for all of us that can listen and retain all of this information. So I'm going to pass it on to all of our speakers today to introduce themselves. And then after that, since we do have a small group, I'm going to make a game time decision on how we are all going to introduce ourselves for non-speakers. But let's start off with Abbiola, who is our primary speaker facilitator for today. As a reminder, this is a 3-day community ops sprint focused on inclusion. You're welcome to join all of them. I hope you join all of them because each of these, I want you to see it not as a trade-off, like, oh, I need to like figure out how to work on my community, but also go to this workshop. But actually the point of this is to use this session to like do some of the work that maybe if you're like me, you've been putting off. So our primary speaker for today, Abbiola, I'm going to pass it on to you to introduce yourself. And then Laneen, you can go next. And if anyone on the Burb team wants to wrap it up, go ahead. And then I'll say a little bit about who I am and why I'm talking so much. So Abbiola, on to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Abbiola Ballah, and I'm calling in here from my Airbnb in San Carlos, California. I am the founder of Friend Education Studios and an equity and inclusion consultant and mentor. And since I'll be speaking today, you will learn a lot more about me a little bit later on. So I'm going to pass it over to Laneen.
Hi, my name is Laneen. I use she, they pronouns. I am the founder of Sublation Studio, which basically offers creative services focused on accessibility and inclusion. My session is tomorrow, so today I'm just going to be hanging out listening to Abbiola. Thanks for coming.
Amazing. Steph, do you want to introduce yourself? I also did make my game time decision since we have a fairly small group. I would love to hear what people's communities are. So your name, where you're calling in from, and what community that you're working on. But I'll let Steph and Drew go first.
Sure. Hey, I'm Steph. I work with Burb. I'm based in Los Angeles, and I say Burb is my community, which means I'm helping lots of different communities, across the world. So I'm happy to be there. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Drew, CEO, founder of Burb. Yeah, we run the Burb brand community. I'm in probably 50 communities. We help build communities, and yeah, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So thanks everyone for attending, and thanks especially to the crew who's running it.
Amazing. I'm not going to force anyone to go next, but I think the easiest way is I'll just call on people, but if you don't want to go, you don't have to. I'm seeing Elizabeth and Anne-Laure next on my screen, so if either of you want to introduce yourself in that order, that would be amazing.
Hey, I'm Elizabeth. I'm in Los Angeles, and I am currently not really technically working with the community. I've just left a company where I was building a safety team, building a care team, and part of their trust and safety department. And so this topic came up a lot, and I am deeply invested in learning and would love to continue working in community. So maybe I'll find somebody here that needs some support too. But yeah, it's just great to be here, and I'm really glad that you guys are doing this, and it's great to see you, Drew and Steph, and yeah, just happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Amazing. And Laura, if you want to go next, followed by Brandon.
I hope you can hear me okay. So my name is Anne-Laure. I'm based in Flagstaff in Arizona. I'm in the process of, setting up and launching a community. I'm a yoga therapist, and I work with mental health. So I want to create a community around those topics and support people who are navigating anxiety, depression, burnout, trauma recovery using the tools of yoga therapy and trauma-sensitive yoga. So yeah, hoping to get some guidance around, how to set up a community to from the start, that is inclusive and setting up guidelines as well for people who are going to join, so we're all contributing to creating an inclusive community. So really excited to be here.
Yeah, hey everybody, my name is Emin. I'm from Algeria, and I love the Burb community. It's been a while. I'm sorry, I try my best to catch all these meetings. But yeah, I am the founder of the Brand Orchestrates community, a community where we have the audacious vision of fitting every misfit out there for the aim of building a world where every voice is heard. We're doing a lot of things around leadership, growth, culture, and mindset. And these kind of conversations really come very often. We try to handle them as best as we can, but I personally struggle with handling different diverse conversations. So that's why I'm here, and thank you guys for having me, and I'm so excited. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine. I'm the VP of Community with a company called Pod People. We are a production company and staffing agency that's powered by a community of 2,500 audio creators. So my role is I'm kind of on the networking education leg of our department. And, I work with an international company. So my hope and dream is to be able to provide diverse opportunities for people all over the world. So I'm here to learn from everyone that I can about what they're doing to do that. I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Lee, if that's how you say it, you're up next, followed by Scott and Tatiana. Again, if you really don't want to go, that is totally fine. You can pass.
I'm so sorry. I didn't, I kind of zoned out on the question.
You're all good. We're just doing intros. So just how do you say your name, where you are currently, and what community that you are in / working on that you want to share about.
I'm Lee, and I'm dialing in from Dallas, Texas. I'm not calling. I mean, I'm not participating for any specific community. I just exist online, and I am looking for some tools to not be violent with the way that I speak when I hear ideas that are also violent. So I'm trying to just sort of manage my own violence and language when I am encountering ideas that distress me.
You articulated that so well, and I can relate to that so hard. So thank you for sharing. Scott, and then Tatiana.
Hi, my name is Scott Moore. I've been building online communities for about 25 years, but I'm about to do a career change into data. But I'm here today because I have, in the past couple of years, as I've been looking into becoming anti-racist, I've been learning that how others are building community is very different than how I have been building community, particularly when it's kind of bounded in this corporate or even nonprofit space. So I really want to learn more about how other peoples are building community so I can learn that for myself, pass that on to my peers who are in the industry.
Amazing. Tatiana, you're up. I put it in the chat, but I'll just tell you again. How you say your name, where you're from, what community you're working on.
Hi, everyone. Steph, it's nice to see you. Welcome back. My name is Tatiana. I run a community called Build a Community Business. It's both a course and a community that helps people build profitable community businesses that are aligned with their values. And with everything we talk about in our community, I think about like, how do you rebuild a business from its core? And I think that diversity and inclusion is another thing that we need to really kind of, like, I mean, it's been said better by other people, but not just tack it on, but really think about what it means to start from the beginning in building an anti-racist and inclusive community and business. And I think that we have an opportunity to do that in these kinds of businesses. And I'd love to learn from others who are thinking about this and who know about this more than I do, and bring it to our community. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for sharing. I'll quickly say who I am, since I've been talking a whole lot and maybe not everyone knows who I am. So I'm Nivi Achanta. I love building communities because I am an obnoxious extrovert and I really like talking to people and being nosy and seeing what everyone's up to. I run a climate justice community called Soapbox Project, and that's why, Lee, your whole like, how do you be nonviolent when other people are being violent thing resonates with me so hard. One of the biggest things that I learned early on with climate justice is like inclusion is such a non-negotiable part of getting all the perspectives at the table and finding solutions that help us create a world that we can all be safe in, which someone else said something similar in the chat. So on this journey, I have met some amazing experts like Laneen and Abbiola and Kriselle, who you'll see her pop in. She's going to be a big part of day 3. So when Burb, and specifically Danielle that used to work at Burb, talked about how she wanted to see more content of how do you talk about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the context of online communities, I was just really excited to bring all the people that I knew that would be amazing speakers and facilitators and content experts together. So again, especially if you're just now joining, welcome Danny, if that is how you say your name. For anyone that's just joining, or just as a reminder, this is a 3-day ops sprint. You are welcome to attend all of it, some of it, whatever. And so the goal here is today on day 1, we're gonna really like set the context, talk about some important concepts and like taking action. And that's what Abbiola is gonna lead. Tomorrow, we're gonna talk a lot about digital accessibility. If you have any community builder friends that like think inclusion isn't a big deal for whatever reason, I find that accessibility is like an easier way to rope people in and be like, look, you have to do this so people can see and hear your content. And Laneen is going to tell us about that and how like strategies that you can use. And then on the 3rd day, we're going to talk about neurodiversity and different sorts of like backgrounds and needs. And it's going to be like panel fireside chat. style. And most importantly, throughout these 3 days, my goal for everyone that's attending is that you will have time to like ask questions about your own communities. We'll carve out some time for us to actually work, maybe play some lo-fi music. I haven't fully figured out what playlist we're going to use for that yet. But one important thing before I pass it on to Abbiola to like truly kick us off is if there are any questions that you want to ask or like anything that you are not comfortable sharing with the recording, what we're going to do is we're going to record all the content pieces of this. So every time someone's giving a presentation or something, and then we're going to stop or pause the recording so that if you just like want to talk openly, you know, like first of all, like congrats for being here and showing up. It's a big deal to do that. So if you have any sort of questions or comments and you like don't necessarily want it to be shared out with people that you haven't met in this space, we will have unrecorded like Q&A segments. So with that, does anybody have any questions before we begin with our actual content? Welcome to all the new people. I'm going to post a prompt in the chat with what we just talked about, but I'm glad you're all here. All right, Abbiola, on to you. Tell us your magical wisdom.
I shall try there, Nivi. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen so we can get started. All right, so I'm not able to see the chat because I'm not in my office, so I don't have my 2 screens. I don't know how I do it with just 1 screen anymore. But so if there are any questions that are coming up, I will definitely get to them later. There will be space for you to ask your questions later on. So a little housekeeping, if you have a pen, a notebook, something, make sure you have something to write with or type on, something like that, because I will be asking you to reflect and think about some things as we go through our little workshop here today. So we're starting today with taking action. And you're probably like, okay, we're taking action, but what are we taking action on? Right? So before we even dive into any of that, I want to start with our first action that we're going to take today is our agreements. And as we enter the space here today, I want all of us to kind of agree to a few things that we're going to adhere to. So I'm gonna read through them, and then I'd like you to either give me a thumbs up, an emoji, or something like that, or just drop in the chat, I agree, and I'll figure out the chat so I can see it. All right, so first agreement, this is a no judgment space, right? We will be open-minded and respect others' opinions, even if we may disagree with them. We will be curious and ask questions, even if they are uncomfortable. I want this to be a brave space for us to ask those questions. If harm is caused in any way, please utilize the word pause in the chat or to me privately. Or if you need to step away, no questions asked. And we will listen to learn, not just to respond. And finally, we will embrace non-closure, as not all of the questions you have today will have simple answers, or will have an answer that you're like, okay, I can go do that right now, right? They may not have that. So if we all agree, can I get a thumbs up or an emoji or I agree in the chat before we move on?
Seeing some thumbs up, physical thumbs ups.
Yes.
We got an I agree in the chat.
Right.
I think that's everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. And thumbs up for me too. Thank you. All right. So I want us to all get on the same page. And I want us to get on the same page as to what we mean by diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. There are so many definitions rolling around out there. And I think it's really important when we come into a space like this that we're all speaking the same language, right? So when I say diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, I use these definitions that I've found from the Harvard Human Resources Glossary for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, and mostly because these definitions closely show how I see these terms. So for diversity, it is the condition of being different or having differences with respect to age, class, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, race, sexual orientation, religion, and the list keeps going on, right? All of the identities you can think of. Equity, the fair treatment for all while striving to identify and eliminate inequities and barriers. Inclusion being the nuanced approach, and I'm going to repeat that word, nuanced approach that ensures everyone is included, visible, heard, and considered. And with belonging being that everyone is treated and feels like a full member of the larger community and can thrive, right? Keyword there, they can thrive. So now that we are all on the same page, basically with our definitions and what we're talking about here today, we're gonna get ready to take action by starting with a little bit of a reframe. Well, it's not a little bit, it's a big bit. So I want us to start by shifting away from thinking of inclusion, and I'm gonna use the word inclusion to encompass all of this for today, right? Thinking about all of this through a single issue lens. And when I say a single issue, meaning just about race, or it's just about sexual orientation, or it's just about disabilities, right? Inclusion does not happen just under one identity, right? It is something that we need to look at through an intersectional lens. So when I say intersectional, I'm talking about that term that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. So she was, hold on, I always want to get this right, so I wrote it in my notes so I don't forget it. So just give me 1 second. Pause for a cause of the one screen. Right, she was a law professor at Columbia and UCLA. And she used the term intersectionality to describe the way people's social identities can overlap. So 30 years later, in an interview in Time magazine, she was asked again what intersectionality meant to her. And I want to read a little bit about what she said. So she talks about it as a lens in which various forms of inequality often operate together and exacerbate each other. She said that we tend to talk about each of these as separate from each other, but what is missing is that some people are subject to all of these inequalities at the same time. And the experience is not just the sum of its parts. So when we think about intersectionality, we need to first start with who we are, what are our identities, right? Because we're made up of many unique identities, and being able to identify these also tells us about our relationship to power and privilege, right? The more privileged the identity, the closer we are to power. The more marginalized it is, the further we are away from power. And we're all made up of all of these. So we have this beautiful wheel that was adapted by the Canadian Council for Refugees. And it was designed by Sylvia Duckworth, who calls herself an archivist. And basically this wheel kind of gives us a visual of what I'm talking about when it comes to intersectionality and power and privilege. So if you take a look, there's different identities laid out. on the outside of the wheel. Now, this list is not exhaustive. There are so many more. But when we look at the wheel itself, when we look into the closer you are to the middle, it's the closer you are to power, those identities. So white, post-secondary education, able-bodied, heterosexual, neurotypical, and the list goes on, closer to power. The more you go out, the more marginalized the identities get. So here's what we're gonna do. I would love for you to think about who you are. And don't worry, there's a reason for all of this that's coming pretty soon, right? What are your intersection identities? How can you locate yourself? And I'll give you an example before you start going through. So this is me. These are some of my intersectional identities. I am a cisgender, heterosexual woman of color. I'm of mixed ethnicity. I was born and raised in the Caribbean, lived internationally for 20 plus years, 17 years as an educator. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the founder of my own business, equity and inclusion mentor and consultant. I'm educated. I have 2 master's degrees. I speak 3 languages. I walk the world in a larger body. I'm able-bodied for now, some neurodivergence, and I'm a visual learner. All of these things make up who I am. And I bring all of these things into a space every time I walk into a space. So again, who are you? What are your intersectional identities? Let's locate ourselves. And I'm gonna leave this wheel up for you. So I'm gonna give you a minute to kind of do that, and then we'll chat. Pretend there's like cool music happening for 1 minute.
Definitely feel free to write this down. We will not make you share it if you don't want to.
Yes, no, not.
I'm writing it down myself.
Yes, please write it down.
Also, hi, Kriselle. I see Kriselle has joined us. You'll meet her soon.
So if there is anyone that would like to share a couple, feel free to also pop them in the chat, or if you're brave and want to unmute yourself, feel free to do so as well. Again, as Nivi said, it is not required. It's a choice. Your choice.
Or if you have any questions, if you have a question of like, why is English, or whatever the question is, like, this is a space to ask it either now or after we pause the recording later. So just know that no questions are stupid questions, because we have all been there. I don't mind sharing.
Sure.
Some of the things that I kind of knew or thought about before this activity is I'm a cisgender, straight immigrant woman. Some of the things that I hadn't really taken a look at or like really sat down with is average / slim body size, dark skinned, which used to come up a lot in like around my Indian family, but I haven't thought about in a while. And something that I've been thinking about recently is like this whole conversation of disability, because I, like last year, went through a pretty significant injury and have still not recovered. And I'm really just thinking through like the context in which I'm starting to think about disability, whereas I never used to think about it before.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, passport. I mean, yeah, something I think about a lot. Right. Thank you, Jasmine, for sharing. All right, so feel free to keep sharing in the chat if you need to. Let's talk about the why. right? Why am I sharing all this with you when you were here to like take action? Well, that was your first action, right? Here's the thing with understanding intersectional identities. It creates awareness, right? Awareness, and just from the shares that I'm seeing in the chat and what Nivi shared, awareness that we are made up of so many different identities, and that all of these identities, as I mentioned before, for my identities, you bring with you into whatever space you're entering. So as a community leader, community manager, think about those members coming into your space. If you have, and this is a reminder for you as well, if you have all of these identities, they do too. If you're bringing all of these identities into your space, they are too. And just a reminder as well, when you think, you've been thinking about these identities, and I'm sure some of you have seen this image of the iceberg, right? In terms of some identities are above the waterline, meaning you can easily see them, and others can easily see them, and some are below the surface. So others can't see them without you telling them about it. So you would never know that I speak 3 languages, and that's a privilege that I hold, unless I say that to you, right? You would also probably never know that I am from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean based on how I speak, unless I say that to you, right? But they are part of who I am and what I'm bringing into that space. So I want you to think about a couple of questions. As a community leader, manager, or whatever title you hold for yourself, how do you build a space where those who enter with all of their intersectional identities can feel a sense of belonging, right? And remember, our definition of belonging, and the piece I'll pick out, is that they can thrive, right? How can you prevent issues from arising that can cause your members, colleagues, etc., anyone in your space from feeling excluded or being harmed in your space? Some heavy questions right there, right? Are these questions that you can answer easily? I see head shaking. What's coming up for you when I ask these questions? How do you feel? And you can just throw one word in the chat. Like, what's the first thing that comes to you? What's the first word that comes to your mind when you heard those questions? Just throw one word in the chat quickly. Overwhelming responsibility. Again, I'm doing tension. I like that word, tension. Yeah, right? Mistakes, compassion, nice. Loving it, challenging, especially when the existing culture is already a monoculture. Yeah. +1 to that, +4. So as you can see, as a leader, we're all leaders here, no matter your title, we're all leaders in our life, right? You will be overwhelmed trying to figure out how to serve each and every one of these identities all at the same time. And even as a member of a space, of a community, right? Now that the blinders are lifted and you start seeing, believe me, now that you're thinking about all these different identities, you're gonna start seeing it even more than you probably already do. You wanna start to fix it all. And you're like, okay, I need you to tell me like what I need to do right now, right this second. And you start getting this like vibe, right? I wanna fix it. I'm overwhelmed, I'm frustrated, there's a lot of tension. And you may even start to feel defeated because you can't. And that's the nature of this work that we do, right? And I don't say that to say, well, this is all a waste of time. There's no such thing as building like a truly inclusive space. And what's the point? And you know what? Just throw your hands up and we're done. That's not where we're going. So, but what I want us to be is completely transparent and realistic with each other and ourselves when it comes to start taking action. You have to be realistic, because one of the biggest mistakes that I see happening when businesses, they tend to think that inclusion is something that's cut and dry, right? That it's something that's a checklist, or it's something that's just one and done. We can just come here, create an action plan, we're done. Just, do it. I have some news for you. It's not. And also, when we talk about belonging, the other thing is, it does not take place in a bubble. And unpopular opinion, probably, it's not only one person's responsibility. So it's not only you as the leader's responsibility. There's only so much you can do to control someone else's action, right? They have to make that choice. Just like we did with the agreements earlier, we all have to agree that this is the space that we're gonna hold together. You have to hold up your end of the bargain as well. And I'll, of course, hold up mine. It's something I used to always say. I used to teach high school students, and I would always say to them, respect goes both ways. I respect you, you respect me, right? You can't have it just one way. And the same goes with this too. So, well, this is a frustrated lady of overwhelm that we kind of chatted about there. So one of the biggest mistakes, I would say, we're coming back to that, is that you end up seeing inclusion as the goal. And the next reframe I want us to have is that inclusion is not a goal. It is actually a journey. If you think about it, if it's a goal, that means there's an end. You're gonna achieve that goal, right? But is that possible? Think about it, right? Then we would all be living in utopia. We would love that. But is it realistic, right? We have to be realistic with it. So the goal, though, is making the commitment to take that action, to continuing the journey. That is the goal. It's to doing the work. And in order to do that, we need to make smart commitments. Smart, the strategic, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-based. I got it. That's what I mean by smart. We need to start making smart commitments. Because inclusive action is not about making those big, grand gestures. I call it the grand gestures syndrome. Anytime clients come to me and they're like, okay, I need to have like an inclusive business, okay, what do I do? Do I just just do all these, I'm gonna audit every single program and I'm like, okay, hold on. That's a really big task. Are you actually gonna be able to commit to do that in a week? Because that's what you're saying to me. No, that's what I mean by grand gesture syndrome when it comes to action. Inclusive action is about taking smaller, manageable steps that you can actually commit to doing. This is about commitment, right? So I always like to use the story of the crow and the water jug. And it's a Aesop fable. And basically, Cliff Notes version, there's this crow who was flying around, really thirsty. They saw a water jug with just a little bit of water in it and wanted to get a drink. So his beak was too big, couldn't get the water. So looked around, saw some pebbles on the ground. Flew over, picked up one pebble, dropped it in the jug, and saw that the water rose just a little bit more. Then the crow did it again. Went back, picked up another pebble, dropped it in the jug, and kept going back and forth, dropping pebbles into the jug until the water rose up to a height that the crow could now drink and it wasn't thirsty anymore. So why am I telling you that story? Because those small actions that that crow took led to a big change, right? Small actions add up and create a big difference. It creates change. So where do you start? What you've probably all been waiting for. Come on, Abbiola, tell me what action to take. We start with focusing our actions. So within your community, think about 3 areas that you can focus in your actions on. It all starts with relationships, because that's what you're doing this for, right? For the people. So who is in your community? What are their intersectional identities? Then you start thinking about, well, how do I even find out that without seeming like super nosy, like all up in their business, right? There are ways you can. Then you think about structure. How is your community structured, right? What do you have in place? What policies do you have in place, right? Things about that Laneen is going to talk about tomorrow, accessibility, right? That's all part of your structure, right? And then the last area is discernment. And I heard some of you in the beginning when Nivi asked that question about, and you were throwing in what you wanted to learn about. A lot of it comes down to discernment and what I mean when I say that is, when are you the person that needs to deal with an issue that comes up, or when do you need help, right? When are you the one who needs to stand up and say something, or when do you need to give your platform for someone else, other voices to be able to say something? That discernment is very important as well. All right, so let's get our action on. And I want to preface this by saying, we're not gonna create an entire 6-month, 1-year action plan in 5 minutes. Impossible. However, based on what I talked about before, we're looking at small actions, right? We're gonna look at what can be that first action step or second action step, and where do you keep going from there, right? So I want you to think about your community, your space. What is one area that you think needs to be changed, or modified to take a step forward in your inclusion journey, with inclusion, right, in your community? And then, what is one action you can commit to start creating that change? Can I give you just a minute to think?
I can play actual music now for
Okay. I want to be mindful of time and have it open up for questions. So we'll just take a minute just to think about it. And these are definitely questions you can come back to, which is the point, right?
And I'm putting them in a worksheet. Also, I'm actually changed my mind. I'm not going to play the music because it'll disrupt your screen sharing. So now
okay.
I lied to all of you, sorry.
You can pretend we're singing. Or humming. So I would suggest, think about what's the first thing that comes to mind. Don't even feel like you have to, There's no right or wrong answer, and there's no right or wrong place to start, right? What's the first thing that pops into your mind when these two questions came up? And then after you have that one action written down, I want you to look at that action that you wrote down again. And can it be broken down? Broken up, broken down? One of those. When I was writing this, I was like, up, down. Can it be broken up into even smaller action steps? It probably can. And what are those? The reason I say it probably can is because in my experience, not everyone, 95% of the time, when I ask for an action step, it's absolutely huge in the grand scheme of things, right? Can it be broken down even more? And what are the steps you need to take in order to actually get that step done? Right? And then where are you feeling stuck or overwhelmed or frustrated when you start thinking about this? It's part of it. Don't need to hide from it because it's part of it as well, right? And that's what, this idea of transparency and being realistic when it comes to taking action is about, right? I would say this, don't be afraid to also share that part of the journey, your journey with inclusion with others, with your members. It actually, I'll say this from someone who's a member of a community as well. When I hear someone say, I'm doing these things, but it's actually really hard and I'm learning. So please let me know if there's, something I did wrong, or please, I'm open. That makes me actually trust them more than when they just say that they know everything, right? All right. So as you build out an action plan, keep going back to those questions. Keep thinking about that. Keep breaking down that action step that you put down. Break it down again, right? Remember, it needs to be something that you can commit to. So if there is anything I can leave you with, remember awareness of other intersectional identities, not just race and gender. Inclusion is a journey. No grand gestures. We're looking for smart commitments, and we're taking it one small action step at a time in order to create change. All right. So if this resonated, and then we'll get to questions, you can work with me in a few ways. I do run a 6-month group membership called Taking Inclusive Action for solopreneurs and community leaders. I do also have a one-on-one VIP program, and I do customized training and workshops for organizations. So you can contact me to learn more about any of that. I do have a weekly newsletter that I send out on Thursdays. If you want to jump on that, this one, the newsletter Thursday is going to be a good one. The subject, I'll give you a little sneak peek, is a stranger touched my hair today. Get ready. You can also check me out on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can search for Abbiola Ballah. My website is there, and feel free to email me. I answer emails I answer my DMs. I'm very communicative, so feel free to message me. All right, so I want to open it up for any questions.
Did you go back to the definitions slide before you stop sharing?
The definitions of
diversity, equity, yeah.
Yeah, sure. If I can find that. Hold on. We're going way back.
And then Drew, maybe after this slide, you can just stop the recording. For people that are listening to the recording, thank you for listening. We're moving on to our Q&A. So if you have questions, you know how to reach Abbiola. So
here we go.
Thank you.